I call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, November 12th, 2024, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as possible. Welcome members of the community here tonight to observe the important work being done on behalf of all school district stakeholders. Dr. Hillman, we have some items in the table file. Will you update us?
Yes, we have several items in the table file this evening. We have appointments, increase, decrease, changes in assignment. We have financial reports, and then we have the resolutions and supporting documentation for the resolution canvassing the school board election, the resolution authorizing the issuance of certificates for the election, and then also the resolution relating to canvassing the returns for the November 5th special election. At the time when we published the board packet, those files just were not yet available from the county. We now have them, and they are part of the table file.
Very good. Thank you very much. If there are no objections, we will add these items to the agenda as we move forward. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Jeff. Second? Amy, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. And I do not believe we have any public comment this evening, so we'll move on to item 4, which is our announcements and recognitions. And tonight we have Carrie Gore from the Minnesota Community Education Association, board member for Region 5. She will be presenting the 2024 Most Supportive Administrator of the Year Award to Superintendent Dr. Matt Hillman. Welcome.
Thank you. Like you said, hi, I'm Carrie Gore, and I'm the Region 5 rep for Minnesota Community Education. I have the great pleasure to be here today to announce on behalf of Minnesota Community Education that Matt Hillman, Superintendent of Northfield Public Schools, has been named the 2024 Most Supportive Administrator of the Year Award recipient. This distinguished award recognizes administrators who champion community education programs and demonstrate exceptional support for community-driven educational initiatives. Under Dr. Hillman's leadership, Northfield Public Schools has expanded opportunities for lifelong learning, early childhood education, and youth and adult programming. Known for his forward-thinking approach, Dr. Hillman fosters partnerships that enhance educational accessibility and address diverse community needs. His commitment to community education reinforces Northfield's reputation as a leader in inclusive education and sets a powerful statewide example. As Matt Dickhausen, Executive Director of MCEA, shared, Matt Hillman's dedication to promoting education that extends beyond the traditional classroom is inspiring. His focus on collaboration, innovation, and inclusivity resonates with MCEA's mission, making him a truly deserving award recipient. Congratulations, Dr. Hillman, on receiving the 2024 Most Supportive Administrator of the Year Award.
We got another one.
One more. The Minnesota Community Education Association Project Award highlights the innovative and impactful initiatives undertaken by dedicated community educators. These projects serve as examples of excellence and inspire others to continue pushing the boundaries of what can be achieved through community education. A partnership with the Minnesota Children's Museum allowed the Northfield Community Education Center staff to dream big and reflect on how they could incorporate play into children's lives. The end result was a large indoor play space designed by the Minnesota Children's Museum. The space is called The Grove. To date, 600+ children access this space annually. The Grove shows what is at the heart of Northfield School District's early learning programs, the belief that children's experiences during their first 5 years and the people who care for them during that time play an essential role in shaping the rest of a child's K-12 education. The project award recipients have demonstrated a commitment to driving positive change in their communities. Their hard work and ingenuity have enriched the lives of community members and contributed to the advancement of community education as a whole. And so I'd like to invite the members of this team to come forward and receive this award.
That's wonderful.
I'm going to just quickly introduce the members of this team. So there was a group of about 5 to 10 that were instrumental in part of the planning process and working with the Minnesota Children's Museum on the designing of the features and what should be in that space and what would feasibly work in that space. So I'm very delighted that both Kyle Roth, who is an early childhood special education teacher in Hand in Hand Preschool, and Libby Stanton, who is an ECFE teacher, could join tonight. They've been instrumental in working through this project from design to continuing ongoing as we keep looking to say what's next in that space as well. So happy to have them here tonight. And they do deserve this award.
Congratulations all. Well done. Do we have any other
We
announcements?
do have some other announcements and recognitions this evening. So first, the MSBA, Minnesota School Boards Association, has released its MSBA Honor Roll for the 2025 Leadership Conference that's scheduled in January. And we want to congratulate Claudia Gonzalez-George and Amy Gerwitz, who will receive Directors Awards. And the MSBA Directors Award is presented to members who have attained 100 or more points of attendance at MSBA training programs within the past 4 years of their terms. So we want to congratulate Claudia and Amy for that. That demonstrates their commitment to continuing their growth as school board members, and I think we should give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
We also want to congratulate Amy Gerwitz, Ben Miller, and Jenny Nelson, who will receive the Leadership Development Certificates for completing Phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 workshops. So we've had other members who have earned those distinctions in the past, and add 3 more board members who have completing all 4 phases, again, demonstrating their commitment to the community by growing as school board members in their governance. And then it just continues to go with MSB awards for Northfield school board members tonight. I am privileged to congratulate our chair, Claudia Gonzalez-George, who in January will be recognized by MSBA with their prestigious Rising Star Award. So the Rising Star Award recognizes a first-term school board member who has demonstrated a commitment to professionalism and leadership development. And MSBA highlighted Claudia's inclusive leadership style and her commitment to the families and students in the Northfield School Districts as the reasons for her selection. So to my knowledge, this is the first time that a Northfield school board member has received this award. So congratulations to Claudia. So those are, I have one more, the sesquicentennial minute. But before we do that, if board members have not had a chance to see the Grove, coordinate with us. We'll make sure that you have a chance to see it. It really is so fun to see the vision that we had for that part of the old Greenvale Park building, the NCEC, come to life. It was delayed for a couple of years just to some of the backlogs of construction due to COVID, but when you see the children playing in that space, it is really something that's very fulfilling. So best in class, like we like to say. So for our sesquicentennial, we've been doing the sesquicentennial minute, where I just share a few anecdotes from this wonderful book by Bruce Caldwell, The City of Schools. And tonight I'm just going to share 2 different pieces fairly quickly. One is about the high school yearbook, and I thought that was an interesting thing to talk about tonight. So the first student yearbook, the Orange and Black is what it was called, was published in 1916, and it described from a student's perspective the high school's leadership, staff, curriculum, and activities, and in the process provided a glimpse of high school education in Northfield just before World War I. And they had photographs of the 7-member Board of Education on the first page. It also went in and talked about other administrators and staff members. And so really the first yearbook, a little more than 100 years ago, was published at the high school. And then the other part that I thought would be interesting to read, just coming off of an election here, is something called the Annual Public Meeting of Electors. So again, this is very early in the school district's tenure. And so the passage says the state legislative act that established the school district and provided the process for Board of Education elections also required an annual public meeting of electors to approve the maintenance tax levy and annual operating budget. As public participation was critical, a 2-week meeting notification was required in the local newspaper and at polling places. The Northfield News article on the 1912 annual meeting announced the results with a multi-layered headline that the school district had passed its $23,000 budget in taxes levied for support of the schools during the coming year, an estimated expenditure of $36,137. 26 voters, which was one more than necessary to achieve a quorum, were present. And so if we think about it, again, a little more than 100 years ago, you didn't have to run a referendum election once in a while. You had to run one every year, basically, where a quorum of the community, 25 or more, needed to come together and actually approve the expenditures, and the tax levy for the next year. So just an interesting trip down history lane, one student focus with the yearbook, and then one taxpayer focus with the annual election. And there are some states that still do that. There are some states that require the electorate on an annual basis to approve the school district budget. Minnesota is obviously not one of those states. They empower school boards to do that, but interesting from our sesquicentennial minute. So thanks for putting up with me as we continue to celebrate 150 years of the Northfield School District.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Board members, do you have any announcements or recognitions tonight? Okay, then we will move on to item 5, which is discussion and reports. And our first item is the School Resource Officer Agreement. Superintendent Hillman will present the School Resource Officer contract with the City of Northfield for the 25 through 2027 calendar years. This will be an item in the consent agenda at the next board meeting.
So in board members' packets, we have the next 3-year contract with the City of Northfield for our School Resource Officer partnership. And you'll notice that this year's contract is a little bit of a different flavor. So we worked extensively with the City of Northfield to look at the contract itself and make sure that the contract had a connection to the school district's strategic commitments and our strategic plan. So there's not a ton of changes overall, but where the changes are in the duties of the school resource officer. So what we did is we really looked at the kinds of things that we know the school resource officer does on a daily basis and tried to capture those so that if people from the community take a look at the contract, they see what our vision for that relationship is. So you will see that. That is really the bulk of the changes. There are a handful of changes that are statutory that were a result of the 2023 legislative session, one that specifically indicated that school resource officers are not agents of the school district. So that had been something that had come up in the previous legislature. There was some discussion and some action on that. You will also see some other references to the new required training that school resource officers are required to have by a date in 2025. And then the financial piece, you will see we have traditionally had an arrangement with the City of Northfield for a 50% share of the school resource officer's annual salary and benefits. And so that's what you see reflected here for the 2025 year. So it's an annual contract. So for 2025, what we've adjusted to is that in the past, we had looked at the individual officer who was fulfilling the role. And because that can change, we know in the last 3-year contract, it's changed a couple of times. We have agreed to standardize on step 6 of the police department contract. So there's 12 steps in that salary schedule, and we're standardizing that 50% based on step 6. So for example, if we have a school resource officer who is at step 8, we are not paying 50% of that officer's salary, we're paying 50% of step 6. So it's just a more predictable way for both parties to be able to know what we're going to pay. And then we did work with the city on what they are projecting for the next 2 years as they negotiate contracts with their police department union and looking at what we think is probably a reasonable estimate of what those increases may be over the next couple of years. So we don't put a percentage in the contract. We actually put a hard number in it because we want to be able to plan and budget for that. So again, this is not an item for, I did have one board member point out one missing word. It was just an article that was missing in one of the duties. We caught that. And so that will be updated in the next iteration of this, but no asking for approval this evening, but we will ask for approval at the next meeting. So be happy to answer any questions that people have. And then we'll send it on to the city after this. the city has been involved with us in this agreement, but it will go to the city council after us.
Okay, very good. Questions? Okay, Amy?
I wanted to just say I really appreciate how the responsibilities are now divided into different categories. I think that really headlines the categories themselves, so it helps people think more broadly. I also really like that we're very clear about what training is required of these officers, including cultural competency training. So I think that's great. I have a couple of questions. One is, if we have a new officer come in, do they have to have completed all their training before they start, or can they start and then be taking the training? How does that work?
So in the past, typically, the school resource officer has done some training prior to coming on as the school resource officer. So I have to go back, there's newly state required training that all school resources officers in the state need to complete by, I believe it's September of next year. So I don't know how that will work yet, whether there's a grace period in terms of them getting that training, or if the department will now have more people train so that they're prepared to step into that role. I don't know how that's going to work yet, but what I can tell you is some of the pieces like the annual cultural competency training. I know that the police department has done that work in the past with all of their officers. So in that case, it would likely, the person would already have had that. The specified state school resource officer training, which I think is still under development. I do not know the answer on that yet, but we can find out for you by the next meeting.
Yeah, you actually pinpointed my real intent of my question is, would we have a time where we wouldn't have a resource officer because there was no one available who had completed all the training? And it sounds like there might be a grace period there. So, okay.
Yeah, and I think that and just for example, in the school district, we have some certain positions that have some required training. And if we hire you in July, you get that training in August before the school year starts. If we hire you during the school year, we work to get through that training as quickly as we can, but we just often aren't able to wait to have that person start until that training is complete.
And then, thank you. Then my second question is, I noticed about the, in 6.1, the hold harmless in the indemnification, and we hold them harmless and they hold us harmless. This is all good. But what happens in a situation like if school resource officer is being sued by parents because they restrained their child? Who's going to be holding who harmless? And maybe that's just getting too nitpicky, but is that a school-related issue or is that a city-related issue?
I think it depends on who the individual were to be taking to court. So I could see scenarios under both scenarios there.
And they probably would
we-
take us both to court.
Right, but I can certainly ask, but the indemnification clause here is the exact same indemnification clause that we have had for the last, this indemnification clause has not changed since the beginning of this agreement. So there were no changes in this particular part of the agreement. So I can certainly ask that question, that hypothetical, and get some feedback for you. But the indemnification clause is exactly the same as the board has approved for several years.
And we've never had to use it.
Correct.
So, which is great. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Amy. Anyone else? Question? Okay, Rob?
Sorry, I'm still in proofreading mode here. In section, under the indemnification, in 6.1, it says, shall indemnify, protect, save, hold harmless. And under 6.2, it says, shall indemnify, protect, save harmless, and insure. So I think that hold is missing.
Yep, we'll catch that. I'm guessing that one has gone through the city council and the board for a few years and not gotten caught. So Anita's taking that note.
All right, Corey?
Just want to thank district administration and the city for working on this. Obviously, this has been a great partnership over the years, and this is an arrangement with school districts and different law enforcement agencies that have been under scrutiny the last couple of years. And I know we've got a great relationship, and I think this just highlights the collaboration in this community. I do want to ask about the timeline. I understand the timeline, but obviously, for those who follow the school district, know that we operate on July to June timeline. Can you just explain when this contract falls and how that is handled?
Yeah, so this is a calendar year agreement that begins in January of 2025 and it would end on December 31st, 2027. So it is unlike all of the other things that we do in the school district. This is a calendar year contract, not a fiscal year contract. So the contract actually begins in January of 2025 and would be completed in December 2027. And of course, that's assuming the city council goes ahead and approves the contract, as I would expect they would.
Anyone else, question or comment? And I also wanted to add to what Amy said about the contract really reflecting our district culture. Really appreciate the work that you put into that and glad to hear that the city's on board. Yes. Corey.
There you go. Sorry. I did want to also compliment the new arrangement of the contract. I just think it's a lot more readable and understandable for those who like to dig into these things outside of this board.
Good, thank you. Okay, our next item is our policy committee recommendations, and Dr. Hellman will present the policy committee's recommended updates to policies 521, 524.2, 532, 535, 608, 614, and 708. These will be items for individual action at the next board meeting.
So that's quite a few policies for the board to consider. What I want to share is that all of these policies, the precipitation for them coming before the board was statutory changes. So the changes to the content of the policy themselves are a reflection of new statute. And so I'm not going to go through each one because typically in the past, when it's only been a statutory change, we have actually just taken it right to the consent agenda. That's what this board said we could do. But we've also been asked, as we have these statutory updates, for us to be able to take a look at adapting the purpose statement, making sure that we're making an explicit connection between the policy and the school district strategic plan. So that's what the policy committee has done. So we're bringing it back because it is more than just statutory changes, which is what our agreement is. So anything more than statutory changes come back to the board for 2 readings. But in this case, all of these policies, the changes are a direct result of legislation in the 2023 session, and the purpose statements have all been adjusted to make the appropriate connection to the school district vision statement, the strategic commitments, and in some cases, the benchmarks. So rather than go through each policy individually, I would take any questions that people have on all of them just within that frame. Unless board members would like me to go through each individual policy, I certainly can. But again, statutory changes only, and then the purpose statement. So I'd be happy to take any questions about individual policies.
And Matt, did you want questions related just to those changes or any question?
Yeah, I think what I will of course take any question that board members ask. I would ask that the questions in this case, because they're statutory changes, be limited to that
Sure.
part or to how we adjusted it in the purpose statement.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments? Okay, Amy?
First, I want to say I really like having the changes that you've done to the purposes. I think that really helps apply our mission to everything we do. So thank you for thinking those through. I have 2 questions. The first was on the purpose for 535. Was that equitable, the one that you were trying to refer back to the mission with that, or was that a change
Well,
to?
that is referencing our strategic commitment to equity.
Okay. Then the other is just a question I'm just curious about for 532. Why is it only about students with IEPs? Why isn't it about all students?
So this particular piece governs how the interaction between peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEP. So this particular one is around legislation that is specific to students with disabilities. So there's a piece of statute that looks at that particular item and how peace officers would interact with a student on an IEP to remove them from school grounds. So it's a long-standing policy that we've had based on state law. And so that's the reason for it. There's some different pieces around the IEP than a student without an IEP.
Do we have a similar one for people without IEPs?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
There is language that is in the student citizenship handbook. I'd have to reference that for you. But I can certainly find that out and bring it to the next meeting.
No, I was just, because it seemed like this could apply to any student, and I understand now that it's really based on various laws that we have to follow from the state.
And there is state statute around what you just described.
Thank you.
Good question. Anyone else? No? All right, then we'll move on to item C, our bond referendum wrap-up and next steps. Superintendent Hillman will share an overview of the bond referendum election and the next steps associated with the projects.
First and foremost, we want to thank the voters of the Northfield School District for their overwhelming support of the bond referendum. 3 questions all passed. First question passed with nearly 60% approval, 59.49%. The second question passed with almost 54%, 53.65% in favor. And the third question passed with 56% approval, 56.44% in favor. And so we are genuinely grateful to the voters of this school district for their trust and confidence that they have shown in us. We do not take that for granted. And we will continue working diligently to earn the taxpayers, the voters' trust and confidence. And so as we move ahead, the next steps in this process are forming several oversight teams. So the first oversight team is really more of a nuts and bolts. It's called the project oversight team. That project oversight team includes the architect, the construction management firm. As you know, we have had a very successful partnership since 2018 with Wold Architects and Engineers. Sal Bagley has been the principal architect that we have worked with. She will be the principal architect for this project as well. And then also Knutson Construction. And this is a time where I think we go back and look at the success of the 2018 bond referendum projects. Those projects were on time. They were done within the budget, and 60% of the build time was during the pandemic. And so we have receipts of how these 2 professional firms have helped us in the past, and we would like to run it back with them. So they will be part of that project oversight team, as well as myself, Val Murderstorff, Justin Robley, some other district administrators and a high school administrator. And then, of course, Chair Gonzalez-George would have the option to appoint 1 or up to potentially even 2 board members, because I think of the length of this project, it might be worthwhile to have 2 board members assigned to the project oversight committee. In the next few months, you'll take some actions empowering the project oversight committee to make certain decisions, interim decisions, up to certain dollar amounts. So the project oversight committee is making sure that everything is progressing according to plan. And then as we get into the project, sometimes there are changes that have to happen, and the project oversight team is typically empowered up to a certain dollar amount to approve any changes that might need to happen with contractors. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming meetings. The second team that is something that's going to be is a quite inclusive team is the core planning team. I think of the core planning team as really putting together the big blocks of the design. So thinking about where certain things go, what are the adjacencies to it? Where does the science department go, in the addition? What are the principles that we use behind the renovation of the vocational wing and the art spaces? That kind of big picture planning. It isn't laying out where are the light bulbs going to go, but it's more about the principles behind design. So that core planning team for the Greenville Park project was 30 people. So I'm going to be talking with Sal later this week. Sal and the team have facilitated, hundreds of these core planning teams across the state, frankly, across the country. And so we will determine what's the right number for this particular core planning team. As you know, there's lots of pieces to this project, right? There is the academic portions that are new. There's the renovation components. There are the athletic components that come with this. And of course, the environmental or the geothermal components. So we are going to determine whether that's one large team that has sub-teams that are part of it, or it might be that we have some independent teams. So that is still being decided, but we'll be sending something out either late this week or early next week. School district staff, parents, students, community members who would like to apply to be part of that. We'll do everything we can to involve as many people as we can. We want the community to have the option or the opportunity to be involved in the design process in some way, shape, or form. So depending on how many people express an interest, we may end up with some focus groups to begin with prior to that project or that core planning team coming together. So very exciting things that will be happening in the next few weeks around that. We would hope that that core planning team would at least meet once, maybe even twice in December. Part of what the core planning team does is they will go visit other sites to get ideas around design. So it is likely, because of its newness and how close it is, that this team would take a trip to the Owatonna High School. Now, several people have been there already. We're not trying to replicate the Owatonna High School. It would be an idea of what kind of design. It's very likely that we will go see Wasika High School that was recently completely renovated, again, to get design ideas. There are a handful of other buildings. Tartan High School, for example, in Oakdale, is a project that's fairly similar to the one that we are completing. They're a couple of years ahead of us in that process, and they are also working with Wold. So that's a flavor of what we're looking at. We've been advised by a number of people from Northfield who have gotten to Virginia, Minnesota to see the new Rock Ridge High School that many people say is very impressive and probably analogous to the kinds of design that we might be interested in. So that's obviously a little bit of a different logistical piece than going to Owatonna or Wasika. And if there are other buildings that people would like us to consider saying, I've been to this school, I think this is a good one to look at. Again, we're not trying to replicate what those schools have done. We're trying to look at the different design mechanisms and what are the things that we would like to see included in the project. The next step after that would be something that's called user groups that would likely start taking place in the late winter, spring. So after the core planning group completes its work, that's when the architects really go to work and they start to create the drawings. So you're going to see the mechanical drawings, you'll see the architectural drawings, and then user groups are the people who use the space. So if we're talking about science labs, that's science teachers, right? If we're talking about the media center, that's the media specialists and the folks who work in the media center. If we're talking about the vocational classrooms, it's the folks who use those on a daily basis. And then the users give the architects feedback like, no, we don't like the light switch over here. We think it should be over here. That's literally the level of detail that they get to. Furniture, all of those kinds of things. And then the architects take that back. They do some adjustments to the drawings a couple of times, try to get to consensus. They also help users understand what can and cannot happen based on code, right? Or other kinds of things like that. And so when we get through that part of the process, that's when we would start to prepare for bidding. And so we'll start to plan and prepare for bids and get those things going. So those are the real next steps in the project. Val and I are also meeting next week with Ellers to be able to start planning the bond sales. So as board members know, we are planning to do, very common with a bond like this, to do 2 different bond sales, one closer up, closer to the beginning of the project. So you've got those dollars to start seeding it, and then another issuance a little bit later on. And so some good news for the district last week that the Federal Reserve reduced the interest rates by another, I think it was a 1/4 basis point. So that will hopefully help us with any interest rates that we would have. We're likely, I would say, Val, probably looking to sell those in January. The first issuance of it, so we're working on what that process is next. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on over the next few weeks and months. Finally, I just want to come back and thank President Allison Byerly and Carleton College. I just don't think we truly here have an understanding of how unique that pledge, which is now a $2 million gift, is for our community. We have not seen, if we come back and think about it, a prestigious and elite private college investing in public education. And so we're very grateful to President Byerly for her leadership and for Carleton College's belief in the school district's proposal. So I thank everyone who supported us through that process. Our job was to educate the community, and we did. Once you educate the community, it's up to the voters, and the voters gave us our answer, and we move on to what's next. So some very exciting things ahead, and I know Claudia will be reaching out to see board members' interest in, serving as part of the oversight as we move forward, core planning teams, things like that. And then we will likely start at the next meeting the construction updates. So every board meeting will have something that will be part of the board meeting about the plan and the process, and as we go from there. So I'd be happy to stand for any questions about that. But very exciting times again. I'm really humbled by the support that the community gave us at the polls last Tuesday.
Thank you. I'm also just beyond grateful to the community for supporting this referendum, and grateful to everybody who worked on it, teachers, students, DYC, community members. Grateful for the board members who sent that to the voters in sync with their choice. Questions or comments? Amy and anybody over here?
I just want to add to the thankfulness that's going on. And not only am I thankful for our community and supporting the education of all of our students, but I'm very thankful tonight for Dr. Hillman and all of the work he put into informing our community about the referendum and helping them understand what their decisions were. So thank you. You worked long and hard, and I'm not sure if you've slept the last 6 months, but I really appreciate all that you've done.
It was a labor of love and a privilege, and we have some district youth council members here tonight who are also instrumental in helping us educate the community. So we thank our students for their work to make sure that people knew what we were talking about, bring student voice. Some places talk about elevating student voice. We actually do it. So thank you to our DYC members who are here tonight. And again, something everyone can be proud of.
Exceptional. Very well. Well done. Oh, so I had a question about the core planning groups or group. Will we have one core planning group for all 3 projects or a core planning group per project?
We are finalizing that determination, whether it's a large group that has subgroups
Yep.
or whether they're independent groups. So we're finalizing that with Sal, hopefully this week.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Call. Welcome, Jenny. All right, then we will move on to item 6, which is our consent agenda. As a reminder, there were some personnel items in the table file added to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping for separate consideration? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Rob, second? Second by Amy. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Our next item is items for individual action, and we have 3 resolutions that Anita will facilitate. Board members, oh, yes, it'll be a roll call vote, so your mic will be on. Great. The first is the resolution canvassing the results of the November 5th, 2024 school board election. The school board election was held on November 5th, 2024. We are recommending that the board adopt the resolution canvassing returns of the votes of the school district's general election. At the time of publication of this board packet, Rice County canvassing documents were not yet available. These documents are now in the table file and accessible to the public on our website. I'll take a motion first, and then we can discuss. I move to approve the adoption of the resolution canvassing returns of votes of the school district's general election as presented. Who will second? Second by Corey. Are there any questions or comments that the board members have for Dr. Hillman? None? All right, Anita, will you facilitate a roll call vote?
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Gonzalez George,
Aye. All right, resolution passes. Next is the resolution authorizing issuance of certificates of election and directing school district clerk to perform other election duties. The school board is asked to adopt the resolution authorizing issuance of certificates of election and directing the school district clerk to perform other election duties. Again, at the time of publication of the board packet, Rice County canvassing documents were not yet received. They are now also in the table file and accessible to all. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing issuance of certificates of election and directing the school district clerk to perform other election-related duties as presented? Okay, moved by Amy. Second? Okay, second by Jenny. Are there any questions or comments at this time? You have a question, Rob? No? All right. Anita, will you facilitate a roll call vote?
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Quinnell,
Aye.
Gonzalez George,
Aye. All right, the resolution passes. Finally, the resolution relating to canvassing returns of the November 5th, 2024 special election. The school building bond election was held November 5th, 2024. The school board is asked to adopt the enclosed resolution relating to the canvassing returns of the November 5th, 2024 school district special election. And the updated documents are in the table file. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution relating to canvassing returns of the special election held on November 5th, 2024 as presented? Okay, moved by Corey, second. And by Amy. Is there any question or comment? Right, Anita, will you facilitate a roll call vote?
Butler,
Aye.
Gerwitz,
Definitely aye.
Hardy,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Cornell,
Aye.
Gonzalez, George.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Next is our items for information, and first up is the enrollment options and history report, then followed by the enrollment report. And Christine Nessett?
Nope.
Nope. And Director Murderstuff have provided a 2024-2025 enrollment options and history report. Val, would you like to present?
Sure. So for the enrollment options report, you'll see this provides all the information about students that are choosing Northfield schools coming from other districts and those students who are residents of Northfield Public Schools but choosing something else. So this year, we had 489 students attending our district from somewhere else. That's up compared to 476 students from the prior year. And we had 866 Northfield students attending something else. That includes other public schools, charter schools, homeschools, and non-public schools. Last year, that total was 818 students. So the first part of that report is really the detail by school. And then if we go all the way to the back, there's a summary that gives you some of the history. Really some of the most notable changes, we had about 5 more students choosing another public school. I would say the biggest change being to Randolph, so 287 to 292. Non-resident students, so students coming into Northfield, was a 13 student increase. Biggest changes there were students coming from Tri-City United, and then the other is just my summary of all of the miscellaneous smaller, because we aren't accounting for every single district on here. That's the other report. We had a little bit of change in 11 additional students in our homeschool population, which we've historically had a very strong homeschool population here. There were some additional students at St. Dominic's. And then still very strong attendance at our 2 charter schools, which we are the authorizer for. So great to see that. And then we had a pretty good jump in the other, which was a variety of things, including some other online options and just a variety of circumstances. So net, we are still losing 378 students comparatively, but in traditional open enrollment, Northfield is still coming out positive for that. So hopefully that was enough of a summary, but if you have specific questions, I'm happy to talk through that.
Okay, and do you want to also present?
I can just share a couple of observations. So once we get this report, we have started to look individual line by line, each student, right? So right now, what we've been reviewing is the students who were choosing a charter school this year that hadn't selected one last year, if that makes sense. So we're going line by line through each of those students, and we see a net increase to Prairie Creek of 4 students. That's very common. They're 5th grade graduates. They get a new crop of kindergarten students in. There's been more interest in Prairie Creek from students from other school districts in the past few years. So we had 4 more net 4 more students going to Prairie Creek this year, not uncommon with their kindergarten lottery. Arcadia Charter School, another school that we authorized 6 additional students. And we know that Arcadia, great school, had done some other intentional marketing this year, which was a positive thing. Arcadia is a great school. I've often said Minnesota has the most substantial system of public school choice in the country. It's a sophisticated system. And being authorizers for charter schools, we're pleased to see students making those selections. Also looking though, interesting at the students who are choosing charter schools next year who had not chosen one this past year. Beyond that, we just see some interesting pieces in that data. Of the, I think it was around 74 total students, that 30 some is the net, right? But 74 total students, only 19 of them had attended a Northfield School District building last year. And so we've seen this piece of some students moving into the district who maybe already attended an online charter school and just continued that. So there's just some interesting pieces. There's no one piece that you say, oh, that's a significant change. So we're looking line by line through those Northfield students who are attending something else, started with the charter schools, and just trying to learn what we can from that. For example, Minnesota Transitions Charter School, we saw 6 more students go there, but we also saw some students who had been at Minnesota Transitions Charter School last year choose a different charter school this year. So it's just an interesting piece of how school choice works and that people have the opportunity to pick what works for them. Also, just I think the homeschool part is interesting. While we increased by 11 homeschool students, we decreased in the total number of families. So we had 11 more homeschooled students this year. Again, we've long had a very strong homeschool population, but we went from 79 total families last year to 77 this year. So just those are some of the interesting kinds of pieces in the data that we look at, and we continue to learn about, what are the kinds of things that are helping others make different choices than Northfield, and then also learning what are the reasons that people are choosing us from other traditional public school districts. Again, as Val says, we look at traditional public school enrollment in versus out. We have a significant impact there in a very positive way. So we always try to learn from the enrollment options report. Some of the information is interesting and some of it can be productive. We try to limit our attendance to the things that are interesting and focus more on the productive.
Very good. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? Okay, Amy?
I just have a question about how the tracking works. Like, if someone moves to Northfield and they're already in an online school, how would we know and start counting them? And, similarly, people who, the homeschoolers, how do we know how many kids and how many families are doing homeschool? Anything like that?
So there is a very robust system of tracking students in the state. So all students are assigned a number and tracked so that we know for lots of different reasons if they're considered a resident of Northfield, if we're responsible for, paying for special ed services or things like that. They track across the entire state. So all school districts are required to report to the Department of Education the students that they have. And so when they transfer, oftentimes the data is shared between school districts to make sure that everybody has the appropriate records and files, but there's a pretty robust system to make sure we're tracking who's where to know who's being served.
And that's through the state.
Yep.
And then homeschool families are required to complete a form for us. So there's a record-keeping process for them to submit a form. We have no oversight or very little oversight, I think is fair to say, of homeschools, but they do file reports with us each year, an intent to homeschool. And so we receive those each year. And it's, again, just this year we had a few more students, a few less families, 2 less families, but more students.
Anyone else? Okay, Jenny?
Thanks, Claudia. I just have a question. Of these total students in 480, of the 489, how many would be attending the ALC currently? How many of those 489?
That's a good question. I don't know if we have that breakout specifically, but we could certainly get that information for you.
I think we can get it because I was able to have, Christine Nessett is our student information system specialist. She knows everything. And so if we ask her to run us the report of that, who are the non-district residents who are attending our ALC, we can get that number. My perception, if that's okay, is that we saw a significant number of open enrollees for our ALC, I would say up until about last year. Then we started to see that not as robust. That's my perception, but we'll get the actual numbers for you and we can share that at the next meeting, or we can share it in the board bulletin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you very much. Our next item of information is the American Education Week, and that is November 18th through 22nd. American Education Week presents all Americans with an opportunity to celebrate public education and honor individuals who are making a difference in ensuring that every child receives a quality education. Northfield Public Schools recognizes and appreciates the team of people who work each day to prepare every student for lifelong success by developing critical thinkers who are curious and ready to engage in our society during this week-long celebration of public education. Like to add anything?
Can I go back to the enrollment report? We did the enrollment options report, but I didn't get to review this month's enrollment report. Is that
Okay,
okay? Because I've just committed to making sure we do that. Plug in here. So the enrollment options report talks about where students are going, open enrollment, charter school, things like that. But the monthly enrollment report shows where we are at with our enrollment. So this is the report you see each month. And I just want to point out, we want to be transparent that you'll see right now, we're about a little more than, we're 21 students behind what our projection was. Last year, if you recall, we ended above where our projection was. And so there's lots of time left of the school year, but I just want to point this out. You see this every month, but we want you to see that we're behind projection right now. Again, last year, we were ahead of projection. So these things, it's not necessarily always a year-to-year piece. We look at that in a broader, longer phase. But I also am committed to making sure that each month we bring this particular part of the enrollment report up, showing the current class sizes. So these class sizes have not changed significantly since last month, but I just want you to see the class sizes at the elementary level. That is something that I committed to showing the board each month. So sorry that I didn't skip that. I just wanted to
Sorry, I
make sure that-
apologize. I thought you were doing that together.
But we should have done that, but now we've got it corrected. So just those are the enrollment, that's this month's regular enrollment report.
Very good. All right, board members, do you have any questions about this month's enrollment report? Okay, thank you very much. All right, our next item is our future meetings, and those are Mondays at 6 p.m. in this boardroom. We have November 25th, December 9th. We'll also have an organizational meeting on Monday, January 13th, followed by a regular meeting. That is all the business that we have tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Yep. Second by Rob. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.